All right, guys, so we're starting notes 2-4 today. This is about segments and their midpoints. You can probably guess what a midpoint is. A midpoint of a segment is a point on a segment that is equidistant from both endpoints. Remember, equidistant means the same distance from each side, so this is basically the exact middle of a line. A point is the midpoint of a segment if it is between the two endpoints and the distance from this point to each endpoint are equal. So we have this little example here with segment PQ. M is between them. From P to M is the same length as M to Q, therefore M is the midpoint. It's pretty easy to understand. So it says you can find the midpoint of a segment that is either on a number line or a coordinate plane, just kind of how we did distance yesterday. There's a couple little things here. If you're looking for midpoint on a number line, you're essentially finding the average. So you're going to take one endpoint, add the other, and you're going to divide it by 2. This is not on a formula chart, but since you can draw a number line, you can probably figure this out on your own anyway. So let's look at a couple. It says find the coordinate of the midpoint of FG. So you can go ahead and do this with the formula we just did. I'm going to use M for midpoint. I know one of them is -3, and I'm going to add to that +3, and I'm going to divide it by 2. That gives me 0 over 2, and I hope we know that that equals 0. So there is our midpoint. Now, of course, you could probably count that as well, but, you know, this is a pretty easy one, not too complicated. Let's look at the next one. It says find the coordinate of the midpoint of AB. Now, this one, it's not as easy to count. It looks like we're going to have some decimals in there. So I'm going to use M for midpoint again. I'm going to use -3.5 plus 3. I'm going to divide that by 2. Now, order does not matter. I could have said 3 plus -3.5 would have got the same thing. -3.5 plus 3 is -0.5 over 2, which is -0.25, which is about right here. So pretty easy, guys. There shouldn't be any problems. Just watch your negatives and check your answers. I mean, look at the pictures and see if you're right. Let's go to the next page. Now, I like this problem a lot, and it's probably going to be the one that gives most people the most trouble. There's another one like it we'll see in a second. It says if the coordinate of a midpoint of a segment AB on a number line is 3. So this time, guys, it's saying M is 3, and one of the endpoints is -2. It wants us to find the other one. I suggest drawing a picture here. I'm going to put points A and B, and then it looks like we're just using point M. So they've already told us that M is 3 and that A is -2, and they want us to find this one right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to work it kind of the same way. Remember, we have M equals the sum of the endpoints divided by 2. Well, now we know M is 3. Let's see, we know A is -2. I'm going to have to add B to that and divide it by 2. So we got a fraction running around here. If there's just a fraction over here, which that's all we have, -2 plus b over 2, get rid of it right off. I'm going to multiply both sides by the denominator. That means I have 6 equals -2 plus b. I can add 2 to both sides, and I get that b equals 8. Which makes sense when you think about it. 8 plus -2 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. We could count there. It looks like there's 5 in between both. So that's really easy. It's on a number line. Please don't make stupid mistakes. Midpoint on a coordinate plane. We're going to name these. Remember, we had x1 and y1, x2, y2. We're going to say this is xm for the x value of the midpoint and ym for the y value of the midpoint. The formula is actually 2 formulas. You have to do it to both. To find xm, you're going to take your x's, add them together, and divide it by 2. Does not matter what order. Then to find your y, you're going to take your y's, add them together, and divide it by 2. Now, just so you know, this gives us the point xm, ym, so it will be in a point format. So example number 4 says find the midpoint between -11, 3. I'm going to call that x1, y1. And 8, -7, x2, y2. Now we just find the midpoint. Let's throw it in. So I'm going to find the x first. Really doesn't matter. See, my x values look like -11 and 8. negative 11 plus 8 over 2. Negative 11 plus 8 is negative 3 over 2, which is negative 1.5. Now, if this wasn't necessarily a midpoint, negative 3/2 is fine, but since we actually have to plot it, make sure and put it in a decimal. Let's find ym. See, my y's are 3 and negative 7. Divide that by 2. That's negative 4 over 2, which is equal to negative 2. So my answer, and I want it written like this, the midpoint, I'm just going to put MP, is negative 1.5, comma, negative 2. Now you could draw that if you wanted to check it, but usually the math in this isn't too bad. So let's try another one. It says find the coordinates of the midpoint VW if V, or x1, y1, is 3, negative 6, and W is 7, 2, which would be our x2, y2. So let's see, I think we can finish this up pretty quick. I'm going to have 3 plus 7 over 2. That's 10 over 2, which equals 5. And then on the y's, let's see, we have negative 6 plus 2 divided by 2, negative 4 over 2 equals negative 2. So that should be pretty easy. Let's go to the last page. Now, these are the most challenging because it's going to be giving you a midpoint and you're going to find the other one, kind of like example 3. So really pay attention on these last two. They're exactly the same, and it's really easy math. All you're going to have to do is multiply by a denominator to fix it. It says M is the midpoint of AB, with A being 0, 1. So there's an x1, y1 because it's an endpoint. But M is the midpoint, so I'm going to call it xm, ym. They basically want us to find x2, y2, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the x's, but this time instead of xm equals, I know what xm is. It's 3. Let's see, one of our x's is 0, but I don't know the other one. But I know whatever that will be, I'll divide it by 2. So there's the initial setup. Just fill in the blanks with your formula. Now, since there's just a fraction over here, I'm going to multiply both sides by the denominator to get rid of it. 6 equals x2 plus 0. I just flipped it around there because guess what happens to 0? So x2 is 6. So I know that I have 6 right there. And this is point B, I think. So we'll just go ahead and write that there. Let's move over here to the y's. Well, I know the midpoint of y is 5. And that's going to be 1 plus y2 over 2. Same situation as last time. I multiply both sides by the denominator. I get 10 equals 1 plus y2. And I can subtract 1 from both sides, and I get y2 equals 9. So the end point B is the 0.69. So really be careful on those. I can see where it can kind of be confusing. What you need to pay attention to is they're telling you A and B are the end points here and that M is the midpoint. You've got to pay attention and make sure you know what X's and Y's they're giving you. So look at this last one. Same basic problem. The midpoint of our Q is M, which is at 0.4, negative 1. There's our XM, YM. It says, what are the coordinates of R if Q is X1, Y1? Now you could think, oh, Q is the second one. I'm going to use X2, Y2, but really it does not matter, okay? So I'm going to use XM. Oops, no, I already know XM. It looks like it's 4. Equals, I need my X1, which I know is 3, plus the one I don't know, divided by 2. It's probably getting a little bit repetitive now. Multiply both sides by 2, so 8 equals 3 plus x2. Of course, we can subtract the 3 from both sides, and I get that x2 is 5. So I know that point R's x value is 5. Let's look at the other one. This time ym is negative 1. That equals my y, which is negative 2, plus the y I don't know, divided by 2. Same deal as the last few times. We multiply by negative 2. I get negative 2 equals negative 2 plus y2. And when I add 2 to both sides, I get 0 equals y2. So my midpoint is the point. Oops, I don't know why I put 2, because it's 0. My point is 5, 0. So not really a big deal, guys, but it can get technical. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Good luck.